recording. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is MANZE. I'll be your instructor for this review session. So far, what you guys have been able to do is experience what it's like to read using a traditional ancestor method, their methods of divination, their spiritual symbology. And so what that's called is bone reading. And what you've seen is that there are a myriad of ways, a myriad of different combinations and lots of complexity that you can have using this system. And from what I've seen, it flows better for you when you use a traditional African system to divine. So I'm going to share my screen so that I can go through some of the information. So what I'm going to start off with for this is basically letting you know some of the meanings for the bones. And again, this isn't exhaustive. If you want more information on these correspondences, of course, this is the textbook that we use by Llewellyn. It's the Magical Correspondence book. And, you know, in terms of the accuracy and the depth of information, it can be found in this book. Okay. And so that is the complete book of correspondences by Llewellyn. So we'll start off with the board, and like I said, there are a myriad of ways that you can do these boards. But the one that you've been using uses the correspondences for the planets, and then of course the correspondences that can be ascribed to the bones. So again, this gives you categories of correspondence, which are different ways that these magical concepts fit together. So the more you understand the correspondences, the more you can read bones. You can even get to the point where you understand the correspondences where you don't really need a spirit board, but for all intensive purposes, it's just great to have a spirit board to activate your intuition. And again, all of these tools have spirits, and there's a particular way that we treat them. We treat these tools just the same way we treat cards or herbs. So for example, these bones, you would enchant them the same way you would do your herbs. You would ascribe meanings to them, because once I go through some of the meanings, you'll see all the different types of information that it can tell you. You will give offerings to these bones. You will do things to consecrate these bones. You will clean these bones with Florida water. You will put them on your altar. You will enchant them. You will offer them tobacco smoke. So a lot of what you've seen us do with the herbs is how you would treat the bones. And again, the bones do speak, and spirit speaks through these bones. And again, this is a system that your ancestors have come up with. And again, I can't say it enough. You have to build a relationship and spend time consecrating your bones in order to receive the types of messages from them. If you enchant them, then you know exactly what their correspondences are, because you have already designated that. You need to make them offerings, okay? And in addition to enchanting them and making them offerings and using Florida water before you do all this to make sure you clean it, you also need to spend time with your bones, okay? So carrying them with you, putting them on your altar, putting them where you sleep, all those things are important to build a divination relationship with your divination tools. Okay, so again, we'll go back. This is categories of correspondence. And when we divine and figure out these messages, what we're trying to do is see how all of these correspondences fit together to give us a message. So on your board, and I have an exhaustive list about the planets at the end, so you guys can refer back to that. You have the sun up there. And so the sun oftentimes is referring to the divine masculine. It's referring to vitality, life, ego, your ashe, energy, power, creativity, and expression. Okay. So whenever you have bones that fall on those tiles, you have to consider the correspondence for the sun. For the moon is the divine feminine, emotions, our inner self. The sun is our outer self. The moon is our inner self, our intuition, our mothers or our relationships with our mothers, our moods, our children. And oftentimes on the board, we use it when we're talking about things that are either feminine or things that are being revealed or hidden, just depends on what bone falls on the moon. And so you can use that. You can also use, what you need to learn or learning. Like I said, and intuition, wisdom, and discernment. Those things are associated with the moon. So you need to remember some of these correspondences. Mercury is the planet of intellect. It's the planet of logic, perception, thinking, and communication. It's also the planet for children ages 1 through 7. So whenever you look at Mercury, you need to think about that. Also think about things that happen rather quickly, because Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. So again, these are the things that can happen suddenly or go away suddenly. Venus is the planet for what we're attracted to, attraction, love, romance, but it's not spiritual. It is material, pleasure, romance, love, femininity, beauty, and art. Okay, so Venus is quite different from Neptune in that way. It's not a spiritual type thing. It's quite materialistic. Then you have Mars. This is aggression, drive, power, instincts. Mars is a very masculine planet. It's about our defenses. It's about the things that drive us to go into action or to fight, the things that make us angry. Mars is also about some of the legal battles that you have, and that's going to be important later on when I start responding to some of your questions. Jupiter this is this abundance planet. A lot of people look at Jupiter because it's such a large planet and they think about, abundance. They think about luck, growth, expansion, higher learning, travel, and religion. Okay. Saturn, it rules Capricorn, and this is, the planet of structure, restrictions, our limitations, the lessons that we have to learn, time, authority, discipline, and all of our limitations. So this is the planet where we start to see what some of the lessons we need to learn from what our limitations are. All right. And so that was the last planet that I saw that you had. I don't know why this thing's flipping on its own. Sorry about that. So you had some bones that you were going to collect. A seashell. So a seashell is something of mystical nature. A seashell, if you think about it, is something that's closed off. A seashell is about spirituality, and sometimes it's your ancestors speaking. Most oftentimes it will be. The Lego is something that you're building, or a foundation to building, or the foundation of a particular situation or occurrence. The cowrie shells, the open mouth is where you see the ridges. So most of the cowrie shells that you'll get, they'll be cut so that they can lie flat. But actually there's a rounded surface that contains the mantle and the shell. Okay, so the cowrie mouth, the open mouth part is saying that the ancestors are speaking. And when that toothy part is down, this is the ancestors are not speaking. That's the closed mouth cowrie shell. The cowrie shells also are about abundance. The cowrie shells can be about death. The cowrie shells can be about divination, faith, overcoming fear. And so there are a myriad of other intentions that are in this magical correspondence book. The cowrie shell is about fertility, growth, improvement, independence, introspection, intuition, and love. So there's so many other things that that can be found in this book that will help you derive meaning. Like I said, the correspondences are very important when you start talking about reading bones. The bottle cap is to cap something off. The bottle cap is to seal something, topping something or closing something off, or something that needs closure. Okay, so that was another one of the bones you collected. You also collected a penny. Pennies are something that is petty, something of little value. And it's also the beginning. If you have a penny and a dime, the penny is the one. It's kind of like an ace, a burst of something, a spark of something. And then the dime would kind of be like the ending because it would be a 10. Okay. The quarter is something of significant value, something that is very valuable to you. Okay. The button is something that's woven into something, something that is a part of this situation. It's tied to something. It's a hidden sensitivity that can produce a manipulated response. It could be like somebody pushing your buttons. It could also be like the nuclear button, something that can initiate a catastrophe. So the button also has these meanings as well. Then you had three different types of crystals, and of course you would go to your correspondence book there, and we'll go back to a little bit more of that. But the black tourmaline is about community, energy, fear, grounding, growth, happiness, love. Negativity, well, it takes away negativity. And it's also about purification. So again, I keep going back to those correspondences because they're important. And all of the crystals that you guys were able to pick up could have been found in this magical correspondence book. The key was it's something that you need to unlock, is secrets. The key is an important point of fact, saying that this is the key finding. This is something that's really important. And it's also a solution. Sometimes the key is pointed to this is the way that this was solved, or solving this problem. The screw is about getting screwed. The screw can have sexual connotations sometimes, but most of the time it's about not getting everything that you deserve, not getting everything out of a situation. final nail in the coffin, or it can be hitting the nail on the head. Normally, it's about not getting everything that you deserve. So some of the questions, somebody asked a question about the case that you guys were reading over, okay? And they said, like, since the injuries could have occurred 8 days before the death, who was in contact with her? And why were these people not questioned? And so what happened was you had a penny over Mars, right? We said Mars can be about legal battles. Mars can be about the defense. It could also be about the side of the defense or mounting a defense. And so in this case, this penny is showing that this is something that was insignificant or very low value to the defense. So what is happening is that the defense is asking a question to try to send the prosecution down a rabbit hole. And so this penny here is saying that if you go and think about its meaning of warner beginning, it's saying from the beginning they knew that this was of little value to the case. It's also saying that they knew that based on some tiny scars in the beginning of where those scars came from, they knew they were able to rule out those other people. And so when the defense did try to use this, it didn't help their case. It was very little value. Then you also said there was a shell, a penny and a shell in and out of Venus. And so somebody also asked questions about bones that are off the board. These are the things that are insignificant. These are the things that have already happened if they're on the right-hand side. If they're on the left-hand side, these are the things that haven't manifested yet. If they're above the board, they're the things that you're thinking are in your head. If they're below the board, they're your internal resources, and they're also the things that you fear. So this penny and shell in and out of Venus, it just shows that, again, this is something that wasn't able to attract the attention of the investigators. Okay, so the penny by Venus is saying this was so insignificant, and the defense tried to use this, but they weren't able to attract. The investigators quickly ruled that out. Okay, and then the shell, this is spirit speaking, okay, depending on its orientation. Also remember we said the Kyrie shell is about death. Remember we said that, okay? And so in this particular case, they're saying this was insignificant as it relates to the child's death. And so the investigators weren't attracted enough to go down this rabbit hole or follow this type of, questioning or way of investigating. They weren't interested in going down this path, okay? Because the Kyrie shell can also be about death. Then someone said, what they didn't understand was the quarter over Mars. And they didn't understand the penny outside of Mars and Jupiter. So the quarter over Mars says that, the defense, this was very valuable to the defense. They were hoping to find someone else to pin this on, or at least be able to deflect and distract and take people to give some sort of reasonable doubt. Okay, this was very valuable to the defense, but it was quite invaluable to the case. And so this says, you know, the scarring, the marking from whatever struggle occurred was valuable to the prosecution in order to rule out any other theories. So whatever happened during that struggle was the best piece of evidence that the prosecution could have had. Then we also have the penny, okay, outside of Mars and Jupiter. And so this is saying that, and based on where they were on the board, they're on the left-hand side, that there's a small amount of information that they're hoping can give the prosecution, well, can give them reasonable doubt, some type of appeal, but it's not of any value. At this point, it just looks like, you know, everything that they needed as far as evidence is what they had. So they're hoping that this would be bigger than it is. You know, if you think about Jupiter, Mars, and Jupiter, like I said, this, you know, oftentimes on the appeal, what winds up happening is that they're usually unsuccessful because evidence gets thrown out. So this is just showing us that whatever they want to use as evidence to try to create some sort of reasonable doubt, it's very insignificant. They, you know, when it stacks up with all of the evidence that's already been looked at. Next question. We had Jariah's biological mother involved in, was she involved in harming her daughter? You had a cowrie shell between the Mercury and the Sun. And so Mercury, of course, is children. The cowrie shell is death. Mercury is things that happen quickly. The Sun usually points to a man, the divine masculine, or power. So in this case, they're just saying that, you know, she wasn't able to do anything. This happened pretty quickly, and her child was taken quite early, because Mercury is children that are between the ages of 1 to 7. Okay. So this happened too quickly. Let's keep going. Then also you had a cowrie shell over Jupiter, a penny off the board, between Jupiter and Mars. And this is, again, about the co-parenting. And so this is just saying, you know, this it's just basically saying whatever money they were trying to not pay, by causing her death, because in this case the cowrie shell is death. This is Jupiter, pennies off the board. This helped them very little. It's also showing that, you know, their co-parenting was about a very small exchange. There was a very small exchange of money. You know, the penny again is just showing, if there was any support that was being paid, it wasn't very much. And to get out of paying that tiny bit, it wasn't worth it. Okay, so the cowrie shell is in Jupiter. This is talking about the child's death. The penny off the board is just saying that, you know, that child support money or whatever money they were trying to not spend, it was a very small amount. And this penny off the board just lets you know that it's kind of petty. Then you have, does the fact that the medical examiner being understaffed and not performing thorough autopsies have anything to do with the case? So you have the cowrie shell on the son. This lets you know that this is quite significant. You know, this was an argument that they tried to make. The button off the board lets you know that they tried to make this a part of the case, an intricate part of the case. And the shell off the board also just lets you know that, you know, the ancestors intervened and this just wasn't something to be able to thwart the case. They, you know, some of these questions that you see so far are questions that they tried to use to strengthen the argument of their defense, and it just shows you that it didn't work. Who were the people who had Jariah in their care the same day she was murdered? Were they family or friends? So then you got the rose quartz, okay? Black tourmaline. So we talked about black tourmaline. Okay. You know, the rose quartz is about death as well. Compassion, confidence, aggression. Okay. And so in this case, the rose quartz and the black tourmaline, the bottle cap reversed, the quarter, the cowrie shell saying that the ancestors are not speaking. All of this off the board is just saying that, you know, there was some types of protection that the child needed that she didn't have. Those people who kept her, they're saying that those people that kept her, they weren't able to do anything to impact what she was going through in her home life. Then you have Jariah's mother having suspicions of possible child abuse by the hands of the father and the stepmother prior to her death. And then we talked about the 4 cowrie shells that are off the board. And so the 4 cowrie shells are saying that she didn't speak about it. So if she's claiming that they said something, no one listened to her. Okay, because the open mouth cowrie shells are about speaking. They probably wrote her off because they had problems in the past. They probably wrote her off because of money. They probably wrote her off because they just weren't convinced about what she had to say. When something touches the line when throwing bones, you have 2 approaches that you can use to read that. You can either read one tile each, or you can read both of the tiles that the bone is touching. Now, for me, when I read, what happens is there's a way that those correspondences start to fit together when the bones are straddling that particular line. Then you have to start looking at enchanting your bones to know more, you know, when it starts to deal with the orientation of them. Okay, so there's an eye part for the cowrie shell. There's a foot part. There's a mouth. And so those will also be clues. So if the eye part is pointing, and that's where you have even more of an opening on the cowrie shell, then this is something that spirit has seen. You know, foot, the direction that it's going, this is what spirit sees coming, for example. So you could use that. Then the question was, is it significant the amount of bones that you have on the board? So what I have seen from experience is that some people, their ancestors just aren't all that talkative. Now, some people have really chatty ancestors. Some people their ancestors try to keep the messages simple to them. And so this is starting to show their personality, or, you know, the personality of the ancestor that speaks to you when you're reading. And so, you know, for me, mine are very chatty. So I might have the most 3, but other than that, lots of bones, lots of interaction of the tiles. Even when I read with Malawa, I have a lot of bones up there, but that just lets me know that this particular personality of this spirit is quite chatty. What kind of co-parenting relationship did Jariah's parents have prior to her death? There's a bone. There was a penny, and it was between the moon and Mars. Now, in this case, this penny is saying what the women, you know, what the stepmother was fighting about was petty. That's what it's saying. Okay, Mars, we get the fighting. Moon, we're talking about women. And then the penny, just letting you know that it's petty. Takia's attorney alleges jury misconduct occurring during the trial. Is this true? You had a penny and a quartz, but we didn't get the particular trials. And what I'll interject here is that with bones, once you enchant them, you kind of understand what things cancel each other out. You know, the crystal quartz is about things that are clear, things that are cleared, things that are healed, things that are vibrating. Okay. And so when you see that, this is, you know, this could mean that this particular, you know, misconduct is something that was quite insignificant to the case. So it's crystal clear that maybe they did see some type of misconduct, but it's so small compared to the evidence that it's not going to change the outcome of the case. So it looks like they tried to find any argument that they could. Lots of innuendo, lots of theory, and when your attorney gets to the point where he's arguing the theory and innuendo and what could have happened and what ifs, then you know that they basically don't have any evidence. This is the same thing that you saw in the George Floyd case. Lots of hypotheticals and theatrics that don't mean anything when someone's sitting in the room with evidence. And so this is saying they probably did, but this was something that was cleared up and it was quite insignificant. Since the injuries occurred up to 8 days before death, who was everyone that Jariah came in contact with, and why were these people not questioned? We had the cowrie shell over Mercury. Remember, we talked again, that is the ancestors speaking. They're speaking about death of a child, because Mercury can be children. This is something that was quickly ruled out. That's what they're saying, because Mercury is a planet that is quite quick. And so they're saying that this was something that was quickly ruled out when they were investigating her death. And I will end there. You guys can ask me more questions. I was prepping this lecture prior to, I think, one or two people that posted questions. So you guys can, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and you guys can ask me a question if you have them. Let's see what you guys have. Okay, the quarter and the cowrie shell is between Venus and Mars. So this just lets me know that, this was someone who was fighting about money. In the end, that was kind of the basis for all this. And it just lets me know that that tiny bit of money was it, was something that they just made the case all about, made their, what angered them. They made it all about the money. This also shows me that they're going to have to spend a lot of money on this attorney, the attorneys that they're getting, and it looks like they don't have it. So when the quarter is saying that this is an extremely expensive case that involves her death, the cowrie shell. Venus lets you know that these people were being materialistic. Mars lets you know that they were that this is a legal struggle and they were fighting over money. And so this also is Mars is about the legal part. Venus is about the woman. And the cowrie shell in the quarter is letting you know that she's had to spend a lot of money that she doesn't have because of this death. When the bones are off the board, and I'll go back to that, that means that if it's on the left, these are the things that they haven't manifested yet. Okay, so everything's moving in left to right direction. So these are the things that haven't manifested yet. On the right, these are the things that have already happened, and so they're not as significant. All right, so these are the things that have already passed. When it's above you, we're talking about what you're thinking. Okay. Sometimes it can be what's working for you. When it's below you, it could be your inner resources or the things that you fear.
Right. I have a question.
Yes.
So, knowing that the left side of the board represents information that may not be forthcoming yet, for my particular question with the rose quartz, the black tourmaline, and the bottle cap, does that mean that sooner or later, or like in the future, near future, it would, like, I guess, be discovered that additional family members, whoever was around her, pretty much couldn't be the ones who harmed her? So would that pretty much mean that they will be soon cleared from that?
Yeah, it does. It also just shows that they weren't able to protect her.
Okay.
Yeah. So the protection didn't manifest. Okay. So we talk about things that probably will manifest. So the protection, they weren't able to protect her.
They wasn't. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Also, I have clothes on, and this looks weird in the Zoom. I'm sorry. But so when the bones are overlapping, I guess depending on the placements or how your ancestors are communicating, can it mean that those bones and their correspondences are amplifying each other or working against each other? Or I guess my question is, can it? I guess I think, to me, it means there's a relationship between those two correspondences, but can it go as like amplifying or in conflict? Does that make sense?
Yeah, because sometimes I get the screw and the thimble. The thimble stands for protection. So I know that, somebody might try to screw me, but I'm covered. Sometimes I get the screw and the eraser, so sometimes they cancel one another out or amplify one another. And so you have to take your time to enchant them, before you can see them or understand them do that. Right now, you need to do them one by one. But once you've gone through the process of enchanting them, then you'll start to see way more interactions between not only your bones, but the tiles as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
What if all of your bones are like they're not on top of the what's the word? Like are the star? What if all of them are not in any of the planets? Does that mean like the reading is in like not important anymore? I don't know how to say it.
No, I think in that case you can just recast them. I do have times where, you know, I work with my Loa and he just does not want to answer the question. So even though I've cast the bones, the shell that represents him will be down. So I have to ask the question in a different way. You know, sometimes the spirits, they just don't want to answer the question. For me, you know, my Loa, he, you know, if I ask him if he wants to talk to the men, he doesn't want to. If I ask him to talk to the women, of course, every time. But yeah, there's certain things they don't want to ask. I'll just ask it a different way and recast them. Also, you need to wake them up. Remember that. Right? Waking them up is shaking them, talking to them, sometimes blowing your smoke on them, but you've got to wake them up too. You know, I'll say to them, wake up. I need to ask a question. I will blow smoke. I will blow my breath on them because I want them to wake up so that I can speak to them. Yes.
So I have a question. Is there a proper way to throw the bones? Like, cause I keep them in like a glass cup, but I'm not sure if I'm supposed to just be throwing them from there or just like placing them in my hands and like throwing them out that way. Like, is there a right or wrong way to do it?
No, it's not. But the more energy you can put, the more you can, you know, get them to wake up. It's just easier for me to throw it using my hands because I can, you know, blow into them. I can tell them wake up. I can ask them the question, and then I can cast them. And I, you know, I just make sure that I have them nice and charged. You know, they kind of work just like herbs do. If you don't enchant your herbs and you just throw it, they might not want to speak at all.
Thank you.
Mhm. Questions before I end? Okay, I did take the liberty to record this class. Again, continue working on your bone throwing. Make sure after this class that you go ahead and do the work that it takes to enchant your bones. Again, I had mentioned this magical correspondence book. Okay, all of your crystals, herbs, planets, all of that's in here, chakras, you name it. And so this is going to help you come up with a list of correspondences so that you start to get a bigger intuitive vocabulary. So go ahead and do what it takes to enchant your bones. And you'll start to see that what you're able to read should increase. I've been your instructor. Today, I am MANZE. again, this review session was for you guys. I have seen how you guys have taken to the African divination system. Like I said, it only can get more complex from here. There's so many different ways that you can make these bone boards and tiles that you can make. And like I said, you get so good at the correspondences that you can throw them without. Okay. So spirit board, no spirit board. When you understand the correspondences and how they fit together, you can read bones. And this is your system. I've been your instructor, the person that has fussed over you guys, loved on you guys. I will see you all in the chat. Continue to work. I will be working with you and continue to ask questions. Continue to learn your correspondences. You're only going to get better. Now I'm going to leave you with a quote from the rapper Dreezy, because I have to close it out the way my godfather would. Gave mercy to these hoes, because that's what Jesus would do. I will see you guys in the chat. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you so much, MANZE.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.